Welcome to the wonderful world of dance, bringing you exclusive interviews with top dancers and choreographers and reviews of the world's best companies across the globe. You can find lots more on our website at thewonderfulworldofdance.com.
Hi, this is Savannah Saunders from The Wonderful World of Dance, and today I'm thrilled to introduce Rose Alice, dancer, choreographer and creative director of the International Arts Collective here in London. Rose is actually currently in the studio, so there's a little bit of studio noise floating around, but we love to have a bit of a dance setting for our dance conversations. Hi, Rose.
Hi, how you doing?
Great, so lovely to talk to you. And so you've just finished in the studio, have you?
Yes, it's been a hot one actually.
Yeah, here in London it's quite warm at the moment, which is quite nice. Well, you've got a lot of exciting projects on the boil and lots of roles which we need to cover. But first, tell me a little bit about your own dance journey, because you grew up in Australia, is that right?
Yeah, so I grew up in Australia until I was about 13. And then I trained in France and Switzerland, and then I worked in Asia for a few years. I was in New York for a while, and then just over 4 years ago, I decided to call London home, and have been here ever since. So I've had the luxury and the privilege of working with corporate and events companies, as well as, other choreographers and collaborations with musicians. And I've had a very unconventional career, but an incredibly fulfilling one personally. So I think I feel very fortunate to have had the journey that I have. Yeah.
I mean, in your very, I'm going to say humble summary of your career to date, because your training that you sort of very briefly mentioned there sort of skipped out a couple of things in terms of, you were awarded a scholarship that took you over to France, as you mentioned, at the school in Toulouse, and you were a finalist in the Prix de Lausanne. And you've had scholarships to, the Basel Theatre Ballet School. So I think you're probably doing yourself a little bit of a
toning it down.
Yeah, somewhat. And I was also interested to read as well that in this incredible, like you say, interesting journey, that you were also a finalist in the So You Think You Can Dance season in Australia.
Many years ago.
Many years ago, is it now?
Yeah. So it was a while ago.
But it's quite an interesting foundation in terms of your training as a dancer, and and how that informs you as an artist and as a creator, because as you say, you have danced and trained around the world, and you've worked in many different environments and with different choreographers and under different training environments. How has that sort of influenced you as a dancer and as a creator as well?
I think I'm very, very, very grateful that I am a classically trained dancer. That's my first and foremost. However, I feel like probably about 9 years ago, I just got to a point where I thought, I think I want to explore a little bit more of my own creation and everything. And I happened to be in Asia at the time, working in Hong Kong and Singapore and China with people that were, I guess, a little bit more on the commercial side of things, that hadn't really worked with ballet people before as much. And so we formed this really interesting kind of, dialogue through movement from these two different parts of the industry. And I really feel like from that point, I kind of catapulted into growing into the artist that I am now, which is just an incredibly outside the box, classically trained contemporary mover, human being thing. And I think, that's I feel incredibly empowered, I think, by even if it's not always seen on a stage or on film, but that I have that creative freedom, and I've got the foundation of a very strong and very, very, very classical technique to give me the freedom to be able to collaborate on stage and film with artists that are in all genres, and which has also obviously led me to be able to, start a company that can celebrate the originality of different artists as well within collaboration. So it's I think that my I think I've always been a collaborator at heart with people in general, but in the past few years it's become really clear to me that what fuels me is collaborating with musicians and with dancers that aren't of my background, and people that can do things that I can't do, and like I get inspired by things that I haven't seen or I haven't done, or that I can find some kind of synchronicity with, to create something that potentially hasn't been done before, or something that, even if it has been done before, feels original to the people in the room, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's a very roundabout way to answer to your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And what inspired you to sort of start creating your own work in the first place? Because often not all dancers decide that they want to start choreographing or doing the collaborations. What inspired you?
I think I've always, even from a young age, wanted to choreograph. I'd get in the studio and improvise until midnight and those kinds of things. And then I think when I got to London, it was kind of this, I guess, a bit of a shift for me as to like where I wanted to sit within the industry. And I realized that in a very short time, I had some incredible opportunity is the wrong word, but incredible people gravitate towards me that gave me a platform or the opportunity to create on them or to create with them. And from there, I kind of just, I guess I was like caught a bug, and I was just like, I love creating work for myself or work on other people. And that for me now, I find more fulfilling than just the dancing. If I can choreograph something and perform it, it's like a different, for me, it's a different level of freedom, I guess, in a way, in saying that I still love to be created on, but it's just a very different, it's a different kind of euphoria, I guess, when you have complete freedom of the whole process. But I don't think it was a moment where I actually thought, I want to choreograph now. It was kind of a natural progression of it was very much a natural progression just into doing this.
Yeah. And you mentioned you're obviously a classically trained dancer, but within, you've got obviously the experience and interest in contemporary dance and working with other different collaborators. But how would you describe your choreography and your work for people who are sort of listening and thinking, well, I wonder sort of what that would look like or feel like?
I think it is quite extreme physically. So I'd say that it's very much New York style contemporary ballet on a technical level, but with a more human approach, in the sense that I don't always do a narrative or follow a narrative. I'm very much emotion led in how I operate and as a human, and also and how I create as well. So I think that it is very physically extreme, but coming from a very raw place. So it's somewhere between a narrative and something abstract. I think I kind of sit in the middle of that, because it's not that there isn't a storyline, but I also always want an audience or whoever is watching to take their own version of it. I don't want to give someone a story. So I think it is, classically contemporary ballet, physically pushing the limits of, the human body. Somewhat shocking, but then but being very much fueled by whatever emotion is key at that point in time, as opposed to having to do lots of steps. I think the steps, again, it's a progression of whatever that emotional thought process is.
And tell me about the collaborations, and particularly I'm interested in the musical collaborations, because you seem to work or have chosen to sort of work with some interesting artists and even DJs. So tell me about how this sort of interacts for you, how the musical elements.
I think as well, I realized again a few years ago that I obviously draw inspiration from dancers, but it was the musicians that were even just accompanying ballet classes and things like that I really felt this really strong connection to. And it's been, for me, it's the most fulfilling thing in the creative process to actually compose with, I'm very fortunate to work with two incredible pianists, Al McSween and Beck Morley, who are, kind of, I guess, a bit like me in the training sense. They trained in classical and jazz, but they're both, they do world music, they do improvisation, they do all these things. So there's this freedom, this newfound freedom when you get into a studio and have a jam, basically, it's literally my favorite thing to do. Like, get in the studio with a couple of musicians and just improvise, and they improvise and I improvise, and then we find these common hooks, or these things that we can then evolve into something. And again, I all of these people that I work with have just been playing for a ballet class, or I've seen them at one of their gigs and I've gone up and been the crazy person that's like, do you want to make something? And then from there, I mean, on top of having some wonderful friendships, there's this newfound creative connection, which takes my work to another level, and I like to think that gives them a bit of freedom as well to also like play around with a different type of artist, not always just jamming with musicians. So, you can jam with dancers and stuff as well. So it keeps it interesting, and I feel like it makes the work a bit more alive, if that makes sense. Like, there's a different kind of energy when you have a musician on stage with you, not in an orchestra pit or anything like that. Like, if they're literally standing next to you or sat next to you, there's just a different kind of energy to bring, which is really special.
And these collaborations have led to you working in a number of different mediums and doing some really exciting projects. What have been some of the highlights for you so far? And I know you do quite a bit of film work as well. What's been a sort of really a highlight in your career so far?
I'd have to say producing my 2 shows in London is definitely up there, even though it's they're not long projects. That's been really special. But then also I did a collaboration with Zhang Yimou and CPG Concepts, which was in China last year. And I basically danced with 600 kinetic lights with a team called White Void from Berlin. And this collaboration was me dancing with 600 kinetic lights, basically chasing me around. And there was, the lights were as choreographed as I was. And, those kind of elements, it's a completely different thought process. It's a completely different, respect and understanding for what other creatives in the tech world also can bring to a piece. And that was quite spectacular to, work alongside the creatives at CPG Concepts. They're friends of mine. We've been working together for years, but then to have a visionary like Zhang Yimou, do a theatre show for the first time ever, and to have the privilege of closing his show with this team of kinetic lights. It's just like one of those things where you have to pinch yourself and go, wow, that happened.
It sounds truly incredible. It really does.
Yeah, it's definitely not been boring.
And tell us about your sort of your interest in film, and I love that you also have this interest between dance and tech as well, and to see what can be created and what is the art of the possible, and where tech will help dance go and vice versa. So tell us about those interests as well, a bit more.
I think it's interesting. I've had many conversations. I actually did a project for the Victoria and Albert Museum, which was a collaboration with robotics. And I sat with engineers in a factory in Manchester and actually choreographed robots.
Wow.
And then we did 82 shows. Myself and Merritt Moore did 82 shows in 10 days. Within the London Design Festival. And it was really interesting because that process was like what those robots and those people can do is still, my mind is just blown. But what's really interesting is that they still cannot function without some kind of human input. And I like to think that even though these technical aspects of robots or holograms or kinetic lights or even some tech music and everything like that, it still cannot be done without a human element. So trying to play around with utilizing both sides to their maximum without letting one overpower the other, I think is as artists now, anyone that's doing collaborations will understand that's a massive thing. You don't want to overpower the phenomenal technology that is in front of you, but at the same time it wouldn't be a creation without an original idea from a human being.
Yeah.
So I even if we can't do what robots can do, well, robots wouldn't exist without human thinking to make them. So like I truly believe that it's going to take stage shows and arena shows and all of those kind of things to the next level. But I also love that none of that can happen without some kind of human input. So that's a really big thing for me. And and film, I didn't expect, I never kind of planned to really work on film, and I have been fortunate and blessed enough to have done multiple music videos with a few people when I first moved to London, actually. And from there, I managed to just build some really nice relationships with directors and photographers that I was working with and cinematographers that I was working with. And, I choreographed my first feature film, which I had the whole company in at the beginning of the year. And I've done a couple of other projects which haven't been released yet that have been quite breathtaking in every sense. And it's been a big learning curve for me that I actually genuinely love to choreograph a film more than stage.
Wow.
And
why do you think that is? Like, what is the appeal for film versus stage?
Because film is timeless. Like in a sense, it's more timeless. When we do, also I get very nervous. I don't feel like most people wouldn't say that, but I get so incredibly nervous before I perform that a part of it it takes a little bit of the enjoyment out of it. Whereas if you're working on film, it's a constant back and forth between you and the director. There's multiple takes. You might do the same thing 25 times over 15 hours, but you have this constant creative process, even when it's finished. And that for me is really interesting because most dancers, I think if you don't ever do film work, you rehearse and then you perform and then it's finished. Whereas with film stuff, it's kind of ongoing. And even when it's done, a lot of the time then it gets taken to festivals. So there's still always something kind of around it, which I find it's all of the good parts for me. I like the grit. I like the grit of this industry and the dance. And I would happily be in a studio with some musicians and a couple of dancers for the rest of my life. So for me, film is the closest thing to that. Working on film is the closest thing to that. And we get to bring things to life. So very exciting.
And how does it change your process as a creator as well, in terms of the choreography that you do? Do you think it changes your work or your inspiration?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there needs to be almost, not more finesse, but there needs to be a different approach to whatever the actual physical step is, because you have to make sure that you're being seen, you're only showing what you want seen, which you don't have the luxury of that on stage because everything is seen. So I think it takes a little bit more time, but it also gives you this really interesting way to be able to show people only what's in your head, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can be a little bit more selective as to, okay, at this point in time, I only want to see her right eye. Whereas on stage, unless you have incredible lighting, you can't always do that. Whereas with film, if you have a nice relationship with your crew, you can make those things happen, which can then, I think, really change the end product.
It sounds really, really interesting. And I've got this vision now of this dancer and this eye being zoomed into.
I do as well now. I'm kind of like, oh, now I want to work with eyes.
Such a fantastic idea. So tell me, you founded the International Arts Collective, which was, I understand, previously called the London Contemporary Ballet Theatre. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So tell me about, and I love the new name, the International Arts Collective. It's not that new because it's been around since 2015. But what inspired you to sort of found this company and to grow it into the International Arts Collective?
I think I just felt at some point in time that I didn't want to not quite fitting in artistically, and I found that I had quite a few like-minded others starting to gravitate towards me, even just to do classes or workshops, or even just get in the studio and play. And I kind of thought, with the volume of people that I work with and clients and stuff that I have abroad, maybe I can start something and I can shift the way that that dancers have freedom, or the way that they're treated, you know, and little things like that, because I'm still in it, you know, and you know, I spoke to a couple of my clients overseas, and within a week, actually, after calling them and being like, I'm going to start a company, they were like, cool, can you fly to China with 8 girls in a week for Tiffany Co? And I was like, oh,
sure,
yeah.
My goodness, that's a trip I want to go on. Next time you get that call, you ring me.
Yeah, I'll give you a call. Yeah, so that was kind of it. And I think from there, you know, it's been quite a fight for me, because obviously, you know, we don't have any funding or anything like that. And, you know, apart from the shows we do overseas are through clients, so obviously that's not a problem. But when I did Human, my first production in 2016, and then Free in June, you know, that's completely about the people involved and about sharing what we do with an audience. And, you know, I have sacrificed and risked everything personally to make sure that there's nothing but good energy and good rapport within the team, what's put out, like all of those things. And I think, you know, it's been a few years to, you know, obviously find the right team, and also doing the brand change was because we're not always in London, you know, we are more collaborative. We're not just a ballet company, you know, we have musicians, we have videographers, we have, you know, so I think making it broader allows me to, you know, fly to New York for a week and do a collaboration with 2 dancers there, and it falls under that umbrella. And, you know, it's those kinds of things to basically celebrate individual artists as much as possible, while having them in a safe environment. I mean, safe as in, like, you know, having that freedom to make mistakes and go wrong and have no judgment. Yeah.
I have to say, like, there's many things about the International Arts Collective that I love. But one of those, setting aside my absolute love of ballet, fashion, and cinematography, and all together, literally, it's like my favorite things. But I love also, very cool. But I also love that, like, on your website, for those who want to check it out, absolutely go to internationalartscollective.com. And it says here that it talks about the talent and the ability that cannot be defined by a specific country, race, or culture. And I think this is so wonderful in, you know, today's modern world, you know, in terms of how dance, you know, sort of the tapestry of dance is so, you know, so rich and so varied, by having so many different types of people involved in the industry and the creation and the exploration of dance and dance work. And so I really love that about what the company does, and I love that line on the website.
It's about acceptance, isn't it? You know, I think as I mean, forget about the dance industry, just in general.
Yes, absolutely.
the earth industry.
Humanity.
Humanity. Yeah. You know, it's about acceptance, and I think, you know, if I'm just a very minute part of it, but if I can generate a positive outlook or an acceptance of another human, or the acceptance of an artist that potentially hasn't got any jobs from auditions, even because they just don't quite fit in, or, you know, it's like those little things. If I can just shift that just for one small group of people, and we end up traveling all over the world and sharing that information, or sharing that kindness and compassion and understanding of how incredibly beautiful it is to be so unique. I just, you know, for me, all of the risk and everything is worth it for that ripple effect hopefully happening. You know, we're in a difficult time as humans, and I think, you know, as artists, we have a responsibility to use our gift to share, even if it is just a glimmer of hope or something like that, with as many people as we can.
I couldn't agree more, and we need more people like you, Rose, who are out there at least trying to, you know, share some hopeful glimmers around the world. And it sounds like you are all around the world at various stages. And your role, you know, as creative director, you've got a lot going on. You must have an exceptionally difficult schedule. How do you sort of, you know, balance all of the different, well, for you, it sounds like all these amazing ideas and these amazing projects and amazing sort of collaborations. How do you balance all of that and dedicate yourself to it?
I just drive my friends mad. No, I'm kidding. Well, no, actually, yes, I do. Honestly, I think, and it sounds super deep, but I am very, very grateful that I have a purpose in life that isn't necessarily a person or a place or an object. And so for me, it's not necessarily, I don't ever feel like I'm juggling multiple things. I thrive off being busy as long as the projects are filled with the right people and the right morals and the right, but the show that I just did in June, we're perfectly honest. Honesty is my biggest thing, and I'm fiercely loyal and I'm fiercely honest. And everything that could have gone wrong 2 weeks before our show on the business side went wrong.
Really?
And I basically had the option of don't do it, or stick to your word, to your team, and to everyone, and just figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I obviously chose the latter, and and I have absorbed so much because of that. But the outcome of, even if we didn't have 1 million people in the audience, or all of those things, I haven't seen one person that came to the show or has seen bits about the show or anything like that hasn't been like, we felt so much. We didn't know whether to cry or to, all of those things. And for me, that it's those little things that make it worth it. And if you can leave an imprint on someone, it doesn't matter how many hours you've been awake. It doesn't matter, how many projects you've juggled. It doesn't matter if I'm covering everyone in London's classes to pay my rent in order to do this. That it doesn't matter if your purpose and your vision is clear and it's coming from a good place. So that's kind of, I'm saying this now and I'm still debilitatingly stressed from, the aftermath of what I'm still trying to, figure out post-show, but there is the good, good is the wrong word, but the positive impact that it's had as opposed to the negative is still there is no comparison. So it's all worth it.
And from an audience's perspective, dance does leave an indelible mark on your soul. When you see something that really resonates with you, you carry it forever. And I've talked about this before because I still can reel off all the pieces that have really touched me, which I think, walking down the street, and you think about this all of a sudden, and you just think, and it does move and change you, and to be able to, as you say, have that passion and to be able to have that purpose in your life, thank goodness, because we want people to be able to make those marks and make those changes and to challenge us and to make us think about humanity and life and the times in which we live in, and to be inspired, and so yes, please don't ever stop.
Thank you, I needed to hear that today.
Despite all the challenges, yes, it must be really, obviously funding in the arts, globally is difficult, and in the UK, of course, all government funding is so very tight, and the arts funding is ever diminishing, and it's so hard to get funding for independent companies and independent projects. And I know you talked about some of the financial, collapses just before your show. That was a huge challenge for you. But it must be quite difficult, like you say, to sort of keep this going within this sort of tight times, really.
Yeah, I think, it is all learning and everything as well. I think there's kind of two ways that you can go about it. You can keep fighting and keep doing all the applications, and not just with council funding, where reaching out to private investors and all these kinds of things. But then also there comes the point in time where you have to just create something. And I'm kind of, at the moment, once I've fixed and dug out of everything from this past show, there's nothing that's going to stop me from continue to create. And I think, it might have to be, until we have, a decent backer. It might have to be on a slightly smaller scale. Maybe it's just a musician and a couple of dancers and those kind of things until we can get ahead. But I guess it's the beautiful thing about the arts. No one can stop you from doing it. You can do it anywhere. I love to dance in the rain. I don't need we don't need much to be able to do what we do. And I think a lot of people forget that because, you know, we're so used to having to be in a studio. You go to class to train. No, you should go to class because you love to dance. And if you have a classroom, that's an incredible gift. If you don't, you can still do it outside. You know, like there needs to be a bit more perspective, I think, and an openness to the way people that approach it in order for it to keep going. I mean, you know, I'm very, very fortunate to have partnered with Onyx Dance Studio, and I've actually been coming on board with them very shortly, actually with the studio as well, to help, you know, again, just kind of build a community within London of, you know, giving artists more space to create. That's basically what we want to do. We want to have people feel like they have a home and want to spend the day there and not just come in and do a class and leave and those kind of things. So I think I've gravitated very much towards, you know, Dane Ram, who is the managing director of Onyx, and he and I have become very close because we have very similar morals. So, you know, if nothing else out of this stressful time, you know, is meant to happen, that this collaboration long term is, you know, we have now two heads, not one, you know, fighting for this. So and a worthy fight, and I love that you know, the building of a community within London of particularly the independent artists as well, and bringing people together and you know, providing more space for more sort of, I guess, independent pieces to be created as well. It's absolutely. And also I think people, and if I could say, if any young listeners are out there,
please do.
you don't have to have a reason to dance, if that makes sense. So you don't have to train just because you have an audition. You don't have to wait for an opportunity to come up for you to do your craft. You know, you have to build a community, not network. You want to build relationships with people all over the world so that you can do your art form anywhere with as many people as possible. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a full-time job in this industry, that's amazing. But even some of my dear friends who have been in ballet companies for the past decade, they still reach out to do creative projects because everyone needs to have as much of an outlet as possible. So I think that it's the one thing that if I could say to, and I say this to, you know, some of my little apprentices, you know, you don't wait for someone to give you the green light. Just do it. Don't think, just do. You know, you have to, if you want to be a pioneer and leave a legacy and do those types of things, you know, no one's going to hand it to you. You have to be willing to maybe absorb a bit of risk or make some sacrifices, and then you have, like, there is no one or nothing stopping you from creating. So
that is the fantastic words of advice, I have to say. And you sort of preempted one of my questions that I always ask, which is about the advice. So, you know, we're sort of thinking.
As I was thinking it, I was like, actually, if I wanted any advice from someone when I was, you know, 17, 18, that's what it would be. You know, not having to, you don't always have to wait for an audition season to come up to start to build your community, to be creative, you know.
Start reaching out now. Start reaching out now. Go to classes and actually speak to people, you know, and you know, those types of things people remember. And I know it's not just me as well. Like, there's quite a few artistic directors and other creative directors and choreographers that I've worked with all over the world, and all of us agree that we would rather work with someone who is a kind and genuine person. So if they know you, you know, you're already halfway there. Well, you can't underestimate the value of kindness. I think in this world, I have to say, kindness is it's so very important. But let's talk about the projects maybe that you're going to be working on next. What's coming up for you and for the International Arts Collective?
Well, at the moment, so basically from Free, we are trying to get it into as many festivals as possible for 2020. We also have a couple of collaborations with some fashion brands, which are in the process as well at the moment. But ultimately, I did choreograph and had the whole company in a feature film, which I mentioned before, which is called Love Sarah, which is an absolutely beautiful indie film, and that will be released in January of 2019. So I there's kind of the rest of the year, I think we're going to be a little bit more quiet, just because it's going to be a lot of work in progress things, and obviously just trying to build up for what is coming in 2020. But in the meantime, I hold workshops for charity, twice a year. We're holding one on Sunday, which is going to be amazing. And yeah, trying to, I think, for me, it's very much keeping that family unit, but also having the resource and also having it in the right places. So yeah, that was a very roundabout, vague answer, but it's kind of like everything at the moment is kind of in the process. If we'd spoken a week before my show, I wouldn't have been this calm. I would have been like, oh my God, come to Free. But it's what that show is, and it's an incredibly powerful piece of work, and that is because I've given choreographically a group of very talented people a skeleton and an emotion, and they've run with it. And I want as many people on the planet to see that and feel something as possible. So at the moment we're working on having a few different versions of it. So maybe a version that we have one musician and 4 dancers and then the whole team, and so that we can actually take it to as many festivals and places as possible.
It sounds like you've got quite a busy rest of this year, another big year in 2020, and some pieces that people around the world might be lucky enough to be able to see in festivals as the work gets toured around, hopefully. And we all love to follow your journey. I know that I will be following your journey and seeing what you're up to and looking out for the indie film. And I'm sure we can follow you on Instagram as well, on Rose Alice Official. And also check out the website for internationalartscollective.com and their Instagram at International Arts Collective. Now, with all of the different projects that you've got on the boil, did we cover them all? Is there anything else that we should make sure that we do not forget to talk about? I would hate to.
I think for now that's everything that's kind of up and coming, and yeah, I mean, we try and post as much content as possible about any projects that we have on Instagram and Facebook and the website, and we all just want to share what we do with as many people as possible. So yeah, anything that comes up, we will keep everyone informed.
Fantastic. We'll definitely be following you, and I know that listeners will be checking you out and following your journey as well. Thank you so much for talking to us today, Rose. And I will chat with you on Instagram. Thanks very much.
Sounds perfect.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't forget to subscribe. We've got some incredible interviews coming up with principal ballerinas and renowned choreographers. We love dance and ballet, and we hope you'll love us. Join us on Facebook and Twitter.